Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Hello everyone, welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear for a brand new season. Here we are in 2021 at the start of October, and what a time to be alive. What a wild ride we are all on around the world right now. How is this still continuing? As I record this, myself and my family have experienced close to 400 days in lockdown, both in Melbourne and in Fiji. We have quarantined in hotels twice over 14 days each. My kids have had 4 full terms, equivalent to a year of remote learning, and we've moved house 3 times since November 2020, and there's another move yet to come. It has been a crazy year with the most epic ups and downs I've ever experienced. And reflecting on the time spent in lockdown, I can either sit here and whine about how many wasted days there have been, how frustrating this situation is. I can cry about when it will all end, which I've done many times, don't worry about that. Or I can look at all the amazing things that went right. My business flourished. I have co-authored a book. We moved to Fiji and experienced probably the best 6 months of our lives so far. We met new people. We learned so much more about how resilient we are and found out what, in fact, we are capable of. But as I sit here now, back in Melbourne and into the longest and perhaps strictest lockdown the world has seen, I admit I'm struggling. I'm struggling with being social. I've portrayed many times on this show continuously that I'm a positive person with optimistic and hopeful thoughts that I love sharing with the world, even if it makes one person's day better. But the world is in a different place these days, and I'm navigating who I am in this new world we are living in and feeling another season of change dawn over me right now. I have been quiet, and it's been just over 2 months since I've dropped a new episode on this podcast. Yes, I've had a lot going on and a lot of moves, but until this moment, there were very little inspired moments that drew me to actually share anything. This morning, though, on a walk along the beach in Port Melbourne, here in Victoria, Australia, I ran into a friend, Claire Besley, who is a healer and who I had on this show 2 years ago. And talking this morning, we shared one of those aha moments, an inspired moment that I hadn't felt for a long time. We were talking about this podcast, Things You Can't Unhear, and she told me how grateful she was for the interview we had on this show and the amount of wonderful feedback and new clients she continues to get after people hear the episode. She said to me there was something about that episode that was really real, and it was the favorite interview that she'd ever given. And I shared with her how at the moment I'm feeling guarded and quite blocked and withdrawn. And although I know my show is a source of light for so many in the world, I currently don't feel drawn to push it. My voice feels blocked and I can't be truly open with how I'm feeling right now. And with her brilliance, she gave me an idea that made so much sense. She said, Maritza, your throat chakra is literally blocked right now, but it will clear and you will feel inspired again. You will. She said there's so much gold in what's been shared over these 88 plus episodes of Things You Can't Unhear, quite literally. And this wisdom and these discussions can be recirculated to your subscribers and new listeners. This is information that they can continue to learn from and pick up and hear again or for the first time. And you know what? She's right. I needed to hear that. So talking to you now about this is a result of that inspired moment we had together this morning. So Claire Besley, if you are listening, thank you. So I will be resharing 10 key episodes from the show that have made the biggest impact on me and, of course, you, my wonderful, curious, kind listeners. starting with Claire's episode, which is one of our highest ranking on the show to date. So thank you, beautiful souls, for coming back time and time again and listening to Things You Can't Unhear and being part of this journey called life together. If you want to keep up to date with what else has been keeping me busy recently, head over to my website, maritzabarone.com. Throughout this podcast so far, we've spoken to various experts about different forms of healing. Now, many of us are going through our own personal experiences that we need healing from. Things that may currently be happening in our lives or things from the past that are still creating discomfort. And this could be consciously or subconsciously. Now, recently I met with a woman called Claire Besley, and I saw that she was teaching healing slightly differently to what I'd seen before. She was teaching people to heal themselves with a technique called self-directed healing. And this technique may be a little controversial for some people, but she swears by the countless success stories and the results that she has seen rapidly with her clients. And the point that she makes with the speed of the healing is the big difference with what she does, because she truly believes that within a couple of sessions, depending on the severity of the case, she can heal you, or you can learn to heal yourself using these techniques. Now, to give you some background on Claire, she spent her life coaching and guiding people as a business coach, a life coach, and a corporate leader. And she grew up very grounded in a deeply spiritual family and a spiritual view of life. And very early on in her life, she recognized the power of self-doubt and heavy emotions on the body and the mind and how that can affect us mentally and physically. Now, she deals with people who are experiencing high stress levels. These are some of her clients, people who have anxiety, people who have depression, people who have performance pressures, and she teaches them to heal themselves. So let's meet Claire. Let's delve deeper into her journey, her story, and her way of healing. Hi, Claire. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited too. I have seen you in action, and you definitely have found your purpose in life, and you've got so much to share with people who are going through real issues in their life and dealing with emotions that are really restricting them from living their best selves. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Well, interestingly, I was actually born to a family where my father wrote books, I suppose, about the evolution of the soul and the spirit in the body, which was quite unique back then. I think, he went to Melbourne University, he had a commerce degree, but when he was, I think, about 14 or 15, he actually had his appendix burst. And back then, people didn't really know what to do with it. It was quite life-threatening. And so what happened was he obviously survived. And from there, he began a journey into understanding why am I here, what's it all about, and really it was in an exploratory phase for the next 30 years before he started writing his books. So I suppose thereupon he learned a lot about what happens and all of the different philosophers and the theories and all the occult wisdom and knowledge that's out there. And so I was born into a family that was already sort of, I suppose, heading down this path.
You're very lucky, aren't
you? I was very lucky. Well, part of me thinks that it was supposed to be that way, I guess. And so, growing up, we didn't go to a non-denominational school. We were basically brought up to go out and find out for ourselves what we wanted to believe in. And I guess for myself, I was very curious-minded, and I always wanted to understand, why am I here? What's this all about? What's the bigger picture? From probably the age of 11 or 12. And so I guess growing up in a family like that, where you were given a lot of freedom intellectually, was really exciting, and it made me someone that asked a lot of questions. And so when I went to university, actually, I studied religion, interestingly enough, and I think I studied 7 or 8 different religions. And the one thing I found was that so many of them are beautiful in their own right. But actually I found that if you look at when they all came into being, a lot of them are actually quite complementary. And back then I sort of had the thought, well, how could I choose one when there's so many? I'd have to study them all. And so I guess I really just went down that path of learning. And, over time, I read all my father's books. I had many, many conversations with him. And it really created inside me a real drive and a desire to have a deep understanding of purpose of why we're here, what's it all about, does evolution exist on a spiritual level? And so I guess I drew my own conclusions over the years. And alongside that, I was having a very emotional journey in life. Being someone that was reasonably intelligent was a struggle because I was quite emotional and I could never reconcile the two. A boyfriend would break up with me and I'd become a mess, and other people were fine and would be able to cope. And I would think, what's wrong with me? Why am I so highly emotional? And I had a lot of deep self-blame and self-judgment around that, which I think is still really prevalent today. And so after being on a very long journey of being quite miserable, feeling a lot of anxiety, working in sort of, I suppose, corporate workplaces and seeing a lot of bullying, it was really hard being a compassionate person to sort of emotionally sustain myself in those environments.
I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah. And I see it all the time now, And I actually look back and realise, though, that I was part of the problem, which was quite confronting to learn, because my mindset was one of a victim mentality, because I always sort of felt like I was under attack, or people weren't liking me, or they weren't valuing me in the workplace. And so that was really challenging to learn later on, that actually it was probably my lack of healing and understanding myself that created that mindset. So I now look back and realise I wasn't the healthiest person to even be working in those organisations, because I was someone that would blame and look at management and be quite critical rather than seeing the positive things they were doing. So I actually left the workforce and I did something quite dramatic, which everybody told me not to. I actually sold my house and decided to put it all into a business. And the reason that I did that was because I wanted to actually be part of the solution and go in and try and shift culture and create positive environments where there was a lot of compassion. And I knew intuitively that would drive high performance. But the problem was that I hadn't gone through my own healing journey yet. I was a little know-it-all and I thought I can solve all this. And within 12 months, I think I'd lost nearly all of the money that I'd got from selling my house.
Wow.
I was living on $5 a day kind of thing and struggling. And I got to a point in time where my health started to get affected. And I went to the doctor one day and they said that there was potential that I'd had cervical cancer, and this really freaked me out. And I didn't know how to cope with it. And at that time, I was business coaching and life coaching a whole range of different people, and I was quite good at it, I suppose. But I hadn't connected any of the intellectual learnings in my life into reality or into wellness at this point. So this was a huge shift for me, because suddenly I'm told, I could have something very, very serious going on. And so that really threw me for six. I think I nearly had a panic attack on the table. I was like, I needed to calm down. And I was coaching a theta healer and an inner child healer, and I ended up living with a hypnotherapist. And it was a really incredible time, probably the most joyous time in my life. Starting to look at these different healing modalities and realising that I had an intuitive understanding of them based on the intellectual knowledge that I'd grown up with. So everything sort of started to coming together for me. And I suppose one day in particular, I looked at all of the different modalities and what everyone was doing, and I realised some of them work on your subconscious. Some of them, like coaching and psychology, work on your conscious mind. And some of them work on your body or your energy field. So Reiki is about, removing energy from someone. There's emotional release techniques that are about the emotion. But none of them actually do everything. And so because I had this amazing team of people around me, I thought, why don't I start sending my coaching clients to them and see what happens? And so we did that. And, so they'd have a conscious coaching session on what are their limiting beliefs and what are their struggles. And then they'd go and they'd get some work done on what's sitting there subconsciously. And then, we'd do some inner child healing. And suddenly just magic started to happen. And I realised I was really onto something here. And so before very long, we all moved in together, the healers, 3 of us. We had a ball. Everyone used to call us Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, I can just see the home having a shining light that's coming out of the top of it.
It was incredible. And so because of the background of my knowledge, I was able to look at all the different healing modalities and work out kind of how to cut and paste and innovate new aspects to make them more holistic. And So I think within a few months, we were doing what we called a supercharge. And we'd have people come in and we'd work on them all together for 4 to 6 hours. And we'd charge them like $2,500. And they would leave a different person to the one that they came in as, just resolved in so many different ways that they hadn't been before.
So you get results quite quickly.
Really fast. I mean, and so in 4 to 6 hours, they then go and literally sleep for 24 hours because their bodies were so exhausted from the amount of upgrading, I suppose, that was going on. And, we went from having really like powerful business people to ice addicts that had ice every day for 6 months. We'd do one session and they'd never touch it again. So I started to realise that we were onto something quite powerful here. And so from there, I then took the process and I realised, I want to create something that I suppose isn't something that creates dependency. Because I've been in the business place, in the business world, and worked in a consulting firm, and we'd get really excited when a company was suffering because we knew we could make more money and we could put more consultants in there. And it really sat really uncomfortably with me. I'm like, we're kind of, I suppose, getting rich from other people's pain. And so I saw that dependence that was being created over time, and that is what happens in business today. And I thought I don't ever want to have clients come to me that have to keep coming back and can't work on themselves, because that in its own essence is disempowering. And if I'm not empowering you, then you can't truly heal.
That's right.
Right? So that's where self-directed healing came into being. I thought I want to put this process together that's really fast, really effective, and allows people to take on board those learnings and start integrating them into their own life. And people told me I was crazy. They said, if you create a business where people can heal themselves, you're not going to make any money. How are you going to survive? And I was like, true, but, my heart needs to do this because this is what I believe in. And to my pleasant surprise, it was so effective that people would have one session and refer 5 or 6 people to me after one. And so I actually got to the point that I was just so busy that I couldn't even manage the workload, and I had to train other people. And so that's, I suppose, how I got to where I am now, which I think we'll be pushing 100 practitioners by the end of the year.
Wow, so
all
you're
over Australia.
Almost like the umbrella of healing.
Yes.
You bring them all together and you give us the tools to heal ourselves. Because I know in my own experience, I have many times gone to see various different practitioners, and I'm trying everything at the moment. And it's quite interesting because I'm thirsty for knowledge. I'm thirsty to learn about how healing works. So you have explained it slightly now, but what sets this apart in terms of how you tangibly do it, how you teach people to heal themselves?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. So the main difference is that most, I suppose, healing modalities, and I would even say the Western world, has a perception that emotion is created as a result of thought. So you think something, or you have a belief, a conscious belief, you see something happen, you think about it, you react, and then your emotions respond. I think what really makes this different is that I completely do not agree with that belief or that theory. What I've learned and what I see and what makes this work different and powerful is because I understand that it's the emotions that create the thoughts. So the way I'll explain that to you is most people accept that, between the ages of 0 and 7, we're in a state of lesser consciousness. So we don't have the cognitive processing ability to recognise when your dad's yelling at you that he's just in a bad mood and it's nothing to do with you. We're in a more of a subconscious state, so we take everything on. And when these experiences happen, we create beliefs around them. So, for example, your father might yell at you one day or might yell at your mother and you might see her in pain. We feel the pain first. We're empathic as people. When someone else is sad, we feel it and we feel sad for them. When you don't have the conscious ability to go, it's not me, it's them, all you do is feel it and you have a really negative experience. And what happens is from that experience, we create subconscious beliefs, which might be, I'm not safe, which might be, I'm not good enough. And these beliefs actually attach to the emotion and they live in your body. So when something happens in life, like for example, I don't know, you're driving down the street and someone cuts you off and you get road rage, we think, oh, that person has has done this and it's created this feeling in me and now I'm angry and they're an idiot. What's actually happened is you have a wound, as I would call it, or an emotion and a belief, a negative belief sitting in your physical body. And when that happens, it just triggers that existing wound and it pops up and we get an emotional charge and we respond. But because we can't see ourselves from an emotional perspective, we only see the physical body, we walk around obliviously unaware of these beliefs and these emotions that we're carrying over time. If you could, I suppose, see everybody in an emotional body rather than a physical one, it would be honestly like walking out there would be like a hospital. It would be messy and bloody and it would be like Zombieland.
Yeah.
If you walk into a nightclub like I've done now, I'm just like, whoa, there's so many people in here that are so busy trying to suppress their pain. But actually for me now with the work that I do, I just see it. And so I guess we are unaware of what's going on there. So when something happens, we have a response which we think is intellectual, but it's like someone's coming up and poking those gaping wounds and we're responding to it, but we're thinking it's the external stimuli that's causing that reaction. So typically what happens is we feel it first and then we attach a conscious belief. So if, for example, subconsciously you believe you're not safe because you've had some traumatic experience, you're always in fear. You might not feel it, but it's under there. And so then when something external happens, which might be small and people might call this an overreaction, someone might do something, it might scare you, it triggers that fear and then we think it's the other person's fault. They made us feel like that. Okay? And then we start to create all these judgments and about that situation and about that person and suddenly the world's an evil, bad place. But actually what's happened is we are carrying a lot of emotional pain. And the reason we're carrying it is because in society today, you shouldn't be sad. You shouldn't be angry. You should never be yelling at anybody. You shouldn't have any blame. We're really taught you shouldn't have negative emotion. Positive ones are fine, but we don't want you, for example, to get fired up or to feel negative. There's a lot of judgment about it. And so because there's so much judgment, when we start to go into anxiety or fear or anger, we immediately become self-critical, like I used to be when I was young, and go, gosh, what's wrong with me? Get rid of that. So then what we do is we push it down. We push it down, we try to suppress it, we take a big gulp, a big breath, and we try to make ourselves be positive. And it's the most unhealthy thing that we can do to ourselves because all that's happening is that negative emotion is getting shoved down into our physical body. And when left there for too long,
and then it can manifest into illness.
It does. I would say 99.9% of illness is a result of suppressed emotion in the body.
It always comes back to our younger years when it comes to healing and the stuff that we have taken on over time. And like you just said, we push it down, and then it comes to a boiling point and it just explodes. But it's those years where we really grow the foundation of our beliefs and our values. And we really need to learn how to shift that if we're wanting to heal.
Yeah.
What are the best ways in your experience to shift those existing beliefs and values that don't serve us anymore?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Look, the easiest way to do it, number one, it's probably a stepped process that you have to get used to because we've been for so long suppressing our emotions that it's almost become subconscious. We don't even realise we're pushing our emotions down now. We're just doing it every day. So there's a process of unlearning that, if that makes sense. And just one other thing I wanted to add is not only do we suppress it, but we go and we drink or we game online or we become
it's a way of suppressing
or we gamble
it, right?
Or we shop. We're literally out there suppressing our emotions so much of the time. And what's so important to understand is that the pain that you're trying to suppress, it's more painful suppressing it and dealing with those outcomes in life than it is to feel it.
So what should we do? We should really acknowledge it.
So the first thing you have to do is you have to become aware of when you're in an emotional state. So, you've got to bring what's unconscious into consciousness. So, for example, if something happens and someone upsets you, you've got to actually recognise that you're upset.
And it sucks and it hurts to do that, doesn't it?
Because it's much easier to focus on that person and the bad thing that they've done to you or how bad that circumstance is. So a level of self-awareness has to happen where you actually recognise, okay, I'm upset. The next thing that you have to ask yourself is, what is the emotion that I'm feeling? And honestly, some people find that really difficult. Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it guilt? Is it shame? Is it grief? Is it fear? And I think these days we're all very comfortable to acknowledge anxiety. It seems to be the topic of the day. And so, okay, you might have an awareness that you're feeling anxious. The next thing that you need to do is take a deep breath and ask yourself, where am I feeling it in my body? Because emotion is energy in motion and it is physical. So you are never not feeling an emotion, and every emotion is physical, so it's always in your body. So this is an exercise that everybody can do. You can even think, how am I feeling right now? So for example, you might be feeling happy. You can scan your body and go, where is it? So this is something that does take a little bit of learning, because we spend 90% of our time in our heads. We're actually very disconnected from our physical bodies and from our emotions because we judge them. So it's, if you're feeling angry or frustrated at someone, how are you feeling? Okay, I'm angry. Great. Take a deep breath. Where am I feeling that anger in my body? It could be anywhere. It could be your hands. It could be your stomach. It could be your chest. Sometimes the jaw. So the most important thing is find it, because it is there. I promise you, I do this every day. So after you've found that emotion in your body, the next thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself, well, what color is it? Because it always has a color. And this helps us to start becoming intuitive as well. It might be black, it might be grey. And it doesn't matter if you can't see it. You just ask yourself, what's the first color that you think of, and just roll with that, okay? So you need to give it a color so that it starts to become more real and it starts to come out of the subconscious into consciousness, because then we can clear it. The next thing that you need to do is you need to ask yourself, how strong is this in my body at a 10 right now? So this emotion that I'm feeling, it might be anger, it might be in your chest. You breathe into it, you feel it. If it's an 8 or a 9, it's an 8 or a 9. Be honest with yourself. Start to have this consciousness of what's going on. So what you then do is, this is what becomes controversial, because a psychologist or a doctor will tell you, we've got to get rid of that. So take some deep breaths and just let it go, or think about something else, or go and do something. No, you need to feel it. But not only do you need to feel it, you need to expand it, and you need to get it up to the highest possible number that you can, which sounds crazy, right? Because if you're angry, no one's ever going to tell you to get more angry. Everyone's going to try and say, calm down, it's okay. No. Unless you process the emotion fully, it will not leave your body and it will sit there in a residual state. So actually, the thing that you need to do is you need to identify where you're feeling it, how strong is it, and then you need to maximize it in your body.
It's really interesting. I've never heard anyone say that before.
Yeah, because we're spending so much time avoiding it.
That's right.
So I can move anger out of my body in about 30 seconds. I can take it from the base of my spine out the top of my head. So I could be in a 10 out of 10 in anger, and I can go to joy by releasing it in about 45 seconds, only if I feel it to its maximum.
So do you physically feel it? Like, do you go and smash something, or do you scream at someone?
So anger's always, any emotion is always in the body. So for example, a lot of people hold it in their hands. A lot of people hold it in their jaws. So all you do is, it's not anything that you express. It's something that you feel. So you sit there and you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and you feel where it is. And in your imagination, you use your breath to actually feed it and give it more life. And so I get all my clients to sit there and they turn it up as high as they can, because you cannot, if you feel anger, you cannot hold it at its maximum for more than 30, 40 seconds.
Wow.
So we spend all this time pushing it down. Actually, we can process it that quickly. And what happens is, once you sort of hold it at a 10 for as long as you can, using your breath and feeling it, ramping it up in your body, and saying to yourself, I am angry, really connect with it. I get people to use their voice to connect with the emotional energy. You hold it at a 10 for as long as you can. And what happens is, it will start moving, and you will physically feel it. It'll either move up through your chest, through your throat, at the top of your head. It'll move out of your hands, or your legs and your feet will tingle, and that emotional energy will leave at the bottom of your feet. It's a really incredible process, and this is just part of the process. But if everybody alone just started to do this, we'd have a much more peaceful, creative, innovative planet, because we wouldn't be walking around harboring all of these unhealthy emotions that are actually what are causing our pain, our inability to think clearly. Emotional energy actually lives in the head as well. So when you're confused, it's actually a feeling, and it's usually heavy, dark colored energy sitting on your brain. So people come and they want to solve your problem, to get rid of your confusion. I just tell them to say, I'm confused, and turn it up and be really comfortable with being confused, and it'll leave, and then clarity will come on its own. So this process not only enables you to become peaceful and joyous, it also creates mental clarity, because it's the blocked emotion in the body that's causing the confusion. because you can't think clearly because your energy is not free flowing.
Clarity is absolutely the key to life. That those moments, and we probably only get them every now and then.
Yeah,
when you're completely clear and energized, you know that you're on the right track. You
can feel like that every single day.
Yeah.
And so back to your question about the childhood stuff, and I suppose this is easier to do with a therapist than it is on your own. But part of our process is then uncovering that emotion. What belief is it attached to, and how long has it been there? So, for example, if I'm working with a client and their emotions gone to a 10 and it started to come back down, and I've worked out that they've got a belief that they're not good enough, as a practitioner, it's my job to get them to go through a process within their bodies where they can find out when that belief began. And it might be 3 years old when, I don't know, your sister was basically jealous that you'd been born and throwing things at you, and you suddenly felt like you weren't good enough. And then that has created a whole web of a timeline of beliefs that have just re-triggered that over time. So everything that happens just reinforces you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. I had a woman come to me, I think she was maybe 70 years old, and she had a belief that she wasn't good enough. And there was so much pain in her body, emotional pain, about feeling her entire life that she wasn't good enough. And I know a lot of people out there can relate to feeling like that. And when I actually did this process on her and took her back to the first time she created that belief, she was 4 years old and her father was standing behind her and she was tying up her shoelaces and she just tied it up and it didn't work, you know. She couldn't properly tie it. And just because he was standing there watching her, she created a belief that she wasn't good enough. He didn't even say anything to her.
Do you know how stressful that is to hear as a parent?
Yeah,
because
I know.
No matter how aware and conscious you are of trying to really lead them in the right direction, you're the same. Your father had all these amazing tools to teach you, and you still sort of harbored a few insecurities and issues. It's so difficult speaking from a parent's perspective to go, how am I not going to screw up my kids and how am I going to make sure? But we need to, I mean, what's your advice for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, firstly, I just want to say that in that particular instance, we were able to remove that belief out of her body in about 20 minutes, and she now knows she's good enough, and she doesn't think it, feel it, or have any experience of it anymore. It's completely gone. So this process enables you to get rid of it even on a cellular level. It leaves the body permanently. And
it's
so
like, get out of here.
It's gone. Because you felt it. It's been processed. It's like the body has to metabolize food. It has to metabolize emotion. And in order for you to clear a belief, you must own it. So I'm sorry to say this, but positive affirmations in my mind are a complete waste of time, because you cannot tell yourself you're good enough when the belief in your body is so strong that you don't. It's never going to work. It's only going to work on a conscious level, but what's subconscious is always what will win. So you're better off to say, I'm not good enough. Find out where that's sitting and let it go. So, for example, when people come to me and they're suicidal, and this happens a lot, I've dealt with hundreds of them, the first thing I get them to say is, I want to die. Because we are told, tell them, oh my gosh, no, it's okay, you're going to be okay. No, they want to die. Let's help them feel it, because it's just emotion and it'll pass. So I get them to say, I want to die, and I find where that belief is in their body, and I get them to say it over and over until energetically, when they say it, there is no, I suppose, charge anywhere in the body, and they say it and they start laughing because they think it's ridiculous. So you must go through the negative, and the positive then comes on its own. You can't just shove a positive on top of a negative and hope that it'll work. But in response to your question about children, which I love, it's a good one. I get that all the time, and I've dealt with a lot of pregnant women as well. And I must admit, it's probably the reason that I haven't had children. But the thing is, as we all know, you must go through stress and struggle in order to grow and evolve. If we lived in a world where everything was just happy all the time, we really wouldn't grow, we wouldn't strive. So I think you have to, as a parent, understand that it's actually not within your control what beliefs they're going to take on or not.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and you have to have a level of trust that if there is trauma, if things do happen, you have to have a level of trust that these things are meant to happen and that there's going to be some positive at the end of that.
And you can have two children who are born in the same house of the exact same parents and have completely separate beliefs and values.
I mean, I'm sure, when my boyfriend killed himself when I was, 17 years old, my parents would have believed that was the worst thing that ever could have happened to me. as a parent, seeing your daughter go through that must have been extremely painful. But I now know it was literally the most important thing that ever happened to me in my life, because if that hadn't happened, thousands of people wouldn't have been through this process and be living a healed life, you know. And so that obviously only comes with hindsight, but that's a level of self-trust that you can really only have if you've done your own work, if you have your own self-worth. So my advice to any parent that's worried about bringing up their children and the beliefs that are going to be instilled, I would say go and get your own healing, because then your self-worth, your beliefs won't kind of, I suppose, filter into them, because we all have them. So the best way you can love your child is to go and get the healing done on yourself. And, you know, I work with children as young as 5 really regularly, and I really generally will not see them unless I've worked on the parent first.
Yeah.
Because what the beliefs that we have when you're in the womb, when you're developing, are passed energetically through to the child. I've worked with children with autism. So children, for example, where the mother can't even pick them up and put them in the car because they're so aggressive. And typically what I find, and this may be controversial and it may not apply to everybody, but she was someone that would never let herself feel anger. So once I got her to recognise when that child's angry, maybe connect with your own anger and feel it, see what happens. And then she said the child would calm down every time. Because often the child is expressing what we can't. Because we're all in the same energy field until, you know, you get to a certain point in your development where you disconnect. But at the same time, I think it's so important to remember that this doesn't just work on the negative, it's the positive. There's a mirror with the positive. So the more, if your child feels very loved, it's because you feel very loved, you know. So you've got to always remember that it's not positive and negative. Everything's just learning and everything's beautiful. So, you know, when you're looking at someone else and thinking they're amazing, that's because subconsciously part of you knows that you are. So we really have to keep a healthy mindset about this and understand that it's not all bad. Some of this stuff is great. And actually, it's really not that hard to shift it. Once you get your head around how it works, these processes can happen in, you know, 15, 20 minutes.
Wow. I've been talking, you did mention anxiety before and how that word does pop up a lot. And I read an article recently where we are using that word just to describe a sense of worry, but anxiety is so much more than that. And I've recently spoken to many people who just seem to be coming to me lately who are experiencing severe forms of anxiety, and I got them to really describe what that physical feeling felt like for them. And some of them had been through extreme cases of domestic violence and have, you know, ongoing post-traumatic stress as well. They can't leave their house without vomiting. They look like this energetic and joyous person on the outside, but deep down they've got these incredible voices screaming at them and this negative energy piercing through them. And, you know, I struggle with not being able to help people like that when I hear them. And I've got another person who came to me and said she's constantly creating illnesses that she thinks she has in her body, and she thinks she's going to get a terminal illness, and she's constantly at the doctor getting scans. This is, how do we approach these situations to really fizzle them out and live a quality of life?
Well, I mean, anxiety is probably what I work with the most, and it's probably for me the easiest thing to clear in somebody, which probably sounds really bizarre. I find anxiety not even that challenging to release in a client, because number one, there's always a belief sitting behind it, you know. So with anxiety, the number one thing is, you know, we're all just so afraid of it, but that's what's creating the problem. Anxiety is exactly the same feeling in your body as if you're an Olympic runner and you're about to run a race and you feel excitement. It's the same physical feeling. But what we have all done is develop this mind, this group mind or group consciousness that it's terrible and we must get rid of it. Actually, we just need to feel it. So, for example, when a client comes to me and they're scared they're going to have a panic attack, I'll be like, we're going to go through it. I'm going to take you right into the anxiety and right out the other side. It's going to happen very fast. It's going to be very easy, so that you're going to see how quickly you can actually move through that, and that it's just a belief system that you have around it. So the number one thing with anxiety is to allow it. It's actually what you resist persists. So the more you don't want to feel it and you shove it down, the more it's going to try and push up, and it's going to amplify and grow and get even bigger. So actually when you first experience the anxiety, and it's good to do it with a practitioner for the first couple of times until you get used to doing it yourself, but the first thing I'll do is they'll come and they'll sit down in the chair and I'll be like, how are you feeling? I'm a bit nervous, I'm a bit anxious about being here. I go, great. because that means it's easier for us to find the emotional energy in your body because it's already present. So I'll be like, this is fantastic. I'm really happy that you're anxious, because now it's going to be even easier to work with you, because it just creates that pathway. So the next thing is like, well, where are you feeling it? How strong is it? And let's start working with it.
Yeah.
So again, anxiety is just fear that is being pushed down to the point, because we don't want to deal with it, where it's becoming overwhelming. So you can literally work with a client in about half an hour to 45 minutes and have them in a state of zero anxiety, and then start giving them the tools of how to manage it ongoing. And then you can do the work to go, where did this come from? Where did this belief come from? And you can go back and clear that out of the body as well.
I wanted to ask, because there's a lot of spiritual teachings out there that say all thought is creative. And that gives me an anxious feeling itself, because if I go deep into that negative thought, that anxious thought, that dark thought that I'm trying to push away, if I go deep into it, I feel like maybe I'm creating it. If I'm giving it too much energy, maybe I'm bringing it to life. What would you say to that?
I love that, because I would say if it's in your head, it's already in your body. It wouldn't have even come into your head if it wasn't sitting somewhere in you. But the way that you can find out if you've created it or not, which doesn't really matter, is you can just say it out loud. So, for example, what would the belief be that you think that you've created?
Just worried about your children, or, worried about my children's health, for example.
Yeah, okay. So just say, my children are not safe. Just say it now out loud.
Oh, no. I'd say I can't do that.
So just say
because I spend my whole time.
You can feel it in your body.
I can, yeah.
Okay, so if it's in your body.
I feel like throwing up.
That's right. So then we would already be starting a session now based on just that. Because it's in your body, you feel like throwing up, it's physical. It means the belief is already embedded subconsciously, and it must be shifted. So the fact that you can feel it is exciting, because we could now work together for 5-10 minutes and I could get rid of that, and you wouldn't have those worries about your children ever again. But you see, you have to confront it and face it, because it's already in there.
Mm.
So we're kind of in denial by trying to push those thoughts out. We're almost like just keeping ourselves above water, whereas I'm like, let's drown together. Let's go deep. Let's get it out.
Come out
get it
the
done.
other side.
And I say to my clients, let's just smash it out, get it done, and you can feel better and you don't have to deal with this stuff anymore. So we've got to actually start facing what's going on inside of us. And that's why you're feeling it physically, because it's actually physical for you. That emotion is such a strong fear that it's physical. So, yeah, that's exciting, because that's something that could clear very, very easily.
Yeah, I like the fact that you say it's exciting.
It is exciting.
It's the end of it. Like,
it'll be done.
Yeah.
It'll be done, and it'll be gone for good.
Look at the confidence. I love this. I just love it.
Years of experience.
Oh, yeah. You certainly have. So I came in here and saw you in action recently while we were filming a short video of you, and you had a group of, 9 people around a board table, and you were teaching them these incredible techniques. And I was only here for a short period, and I really didn't want to leave, because I was intrigued with what you were teaching them, and the variation of people that were in here and learning about this stuff. Talk to us about these workshops that you do.
Yeah, so basically, I think, as I expressed earlier, because you literally get a result from one session. You don't need to come 5 times. You can literally come once, and we can heal trauma in one go. And we get a range of people. Sometimes it's just business people that want to climb further up the ladder. Sometimes it's people with really deep issues, alcoholics, etc. And I tell people, in terms of a one-on-one session, you can just have one session and you will get a result. We don't need 5 or 10, and there's no homework, So basically, because people got such quick results, the business built up, and I started training. And so it's really interesting, the people that I attract in the training now. We've got quite a lot of men coming through finally. It used to be all women, and now I get 2 to 3 men in every training. And we've had some people that are healers. We've had kinesiologists. We've had a lot of corporate people, coaches, nurses, like just a huge plethora of people. And I guess it's a 3-day workshop, and it's for people who are already in, I suppose, alternative medicine, and really just want to advance their skills and have something that's really powerful to help their clients or patients heal themselves. And then the second aspect of it is people that have always just had that compassion and known there's something I want to do out there that's really going to help people. And maybe you're reasonably good with people. You're the person that everyone rings when they've got a problem. You like helping people unpack things a little bit. But you'd love to be able to go deep and really see dramatic change, and you want a new career. That's the second category of people that we attract. And so the training goes for 3 days. It's really intense, because you cannot do this work on someone if you haven't had it done on yourself. it's actually really hard, even when I articulate to you the process, until you've been through it, it's very difficult to grasp. It's such a physical experience, even though no one touches you. And so the 3-day training basically is you learning the process and then you practicing it on other people and they practice it on you, so that by the end of the 3 days, you're actually able to go and do this on other people. And me being a bit of a numbers person, I measure everything, and I don't think I've ever had anyone finish the training with a confidence level of going and doing it lower than a 7 or an 8 in terms of feeling like now I can go and actually do this. And the good thing is, you know, you're not limited to who you can do it on. You can do this on your children. You can do this on your friends. You can do this on your partner. It's not psychology where there's all these rules. You can only, you know, go for it. Why wouldn't we help the people we love first more than anything else, you know? So do it your wives, do your kids, help everyone around you that you love. And then if you want to turn it into a business, you know, there's a lot of people out there that need this. I don't really meet anyone that I think doesn't. And honestly, if it was up to me, I'd probably have it done every 2-3 weeks on myself, just to keep myself at that level of being and joy that I need to be at to perform my best.
I've just got a lingering question. So if once you do acknowledge that dark thing and you've been through that feeling and you've gone to 10, then what do you do? So
then it comes back down. So then you'll feel it releasing from your body. So then if you're with a practitioner will then take you back in a subconscious state to when was the first time you created this belief. And you might go back to 3 or 4 or 5 years old and you might have an experience. You might recall an experience. And often what remembering that experience will do will bring more up in the body. Because when you were 3 or 4 and your mum left you there by yourself and you felt alone, that little baby has a lot of pain. So you'll feel that physically. So then usually more emotion will come up and we'll do the same thing. We'll amplify it and we'll release it. Then what we do is a really, it's called inner child healing, but we do it through the body. So we then get you, the person you are now, to go back into that memory and love that little child, comfort the child, and actually give it a hug and heal that child, I suppose, on almost like a guided meditation, but we're doing it through the body. So everything that child is feeling, you're feeling and you're releasing at the same time. So what happens is by the time you finish doing that work, you no longer have a perception of being hurt because you've actually gone in and saved yourself. Because I think the definition really of true love is loving and saving yourself. We often think we want other people to love us, other people to support us. It's only what we're not giving ourselves is what we seek in others. So this process teaches you how to actually love yourself, not just tell yourself you love yourself, but go in and have deep compassion for everything that you've ever been through and see yourself through the eyes of love. Because unconsciously we just judge ourselves. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Why don't I do this? You know, and all these things that we've done in our past, we're holding judgment in our bodies about it. So this process allows you to release the judgment and actually look at yourself objectively and go, I was just a kid, you know, and often a lot of grief comes with that. So that's probably the deeper part of the process that comes, but you can't really get to that adequately until you've allowed yourself to feel the emotion of the current situation, because the emotion will block your ability to think clearly. So you must first release the emotion so that you emotionally and energetically calm down, and then you have the mental clarity to start doing that guided work that's always best done with a practitioner.
And you're seeing the results as soon as people leave the session, aren't you?
On the spot.
On the spot.
On the spot.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Every time. Look, the only time that there's not a profound result is if the person is resisting the process. So I always say to all my clients, you know, you've got to come open and willing, and if you allow the process, you know, you'll get extreme results. And these results are not just emotional. You know, people have healed asthma of 20 years. I don't think I have ever had anyone come in with a high level of pain and leave with a high level of pain, because the body itself starts to release so much emotion and the body goes to peace and you get physical healing. That's not what we aim for. That's just a consequence of the process.
So you say in a lot of your videos and your collateral that it's people that have tried pretty much everything and are left with no alternative but to try something new. Yeah.
And then they come here and they're like, wow.
Why didn't I come here earlier?
I mean, I'm talking, I couldn't even tell you how many rapes I've dealt with, or incest, or physical abuse, drug addiction, every drug I've dealt with, lots of grief, car accidents. Like there's nothing really. I've had cancer, brain tumours. There's really nothing that at this point that we haven't been able to have an impact with.
How have you dealt with terminal illnesses, and what result have you seen from things like that?
Yeah, look, they're an interesting one. Unfortunately, people usually come here when it's too late. So what I've found with some of the cancer stuff is that they come when they're really on the last legs, whereas I think if you come early on, which is the best time to do it, because if the cancer is spreading rapidly, then you need a lot of practitioners working on you 24/7 to counteract the speed of that growth. So that's the challenge that you have there. However, when you come early on, I've had people, with lumps in their breast, one session gone completely, several times, and I know a lot of other practitioners have as well. So it really, because illness is just your body trying to tell you something. It's just, it's just that emotional suppressed energy in your body that has been left unattended that is developing into something. So once you learn this language, you very quickly understand that this kind of presentation of illness is the equivalent of this sort of emotional issue. So we can know based on, I always ask people what's wrong with your body, what's going on, because from there I can very quickly understand emotionally what caused it and just work straight with that issue. So obviously the sooner you come, the better. If it's too far down the track, it's actually still of great benefit because it may prolong your life because we're allowing the body to, I suppose, go to a more peaceful state. We're helping you to be more balanced emotionally. And so even if it is too far advanced for this to be able to pare it back, you're still going to have a much more peaceful journey. So I think once we shift our focus and our attitude and we realize how magical and brilliant our bodies are, that it's just infinite intelligence, once we actually start to understand that, which I think is happening more and more out there, we will all be able to work on our own physicality, and when our own illnesses come up, we'll be able to resolve them ourselves. And that's the world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where we heal ourselves, where we recognize that everything that's happening within our bodies is something that's going on that is trying to give us a message. Then, it's going to be really exciting, and we're going to have much less negative attitudes, and we're not going to need anywhere near as many hospitals. I think the stats are right now that in Australia there's something like 437,000 visits to a doctor a day.
Wow.
To me, that's mind-blowing. I haven't been to one for 10 years. So what could we be doing if we all started to actually realise that our emotions, our body, our thoughts, they're all one. And you go to a doctor, they treat the symptom. They don't look at the cause or what's the emotional thing that's happened underneath to create that. They just go with some drugs or whatever it is. We've got to start looking at things holistically. We need to be asking our patients, what's going on emotionally for you? There's so many textbooks and data about if it's this illness, this is the emotional cause. Even if they just read it, we would really start to not need anywhere near the medical intervention that we need right now. And hospitals would be for, you got your leg cut off and someone's got to sew it back on. Fair enough. I need a hospital
Emergency.
For that. Yeah.
There's a lot of integrative medicine that's coming out now, and a lot more people are jumping onto it. So I'm hoping that is something that will grow and they can merge the two things together.
And look, I think it's absolutely inevitable. And, I have to say for a long time there I had a lot of resentment towards Western medicine, and that was perhaps when I was less healed. But now I just think, we had to start somewhere. Yeah. And the physical body is obviously the first place to start. So now I have enormous gratitude for where we've come and how far we've advanced. But it's definitely the right time now to integrate and take a more holistic approach to healing.
Well, thank you so very much for your incredible insights. I've definitely heard things I haven't heard anywhere else before, right. And I've spoken to many, many healers over my time. I'd love to know what you guys thought of this episode. Let's keep the conversation going. Reach out to me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, and also on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And please subscribe to the show, leave us a rating and review so that other people can find out about us. And Claire, if people want to find you, I will put your link in our show notes, but just give us your website so we can find you in the meantime.
Sure. It's www.inspirited.com.au.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.